Keep going.
The wind tore across the land without mercy, pushing thick snow over empty fields where nothing moved and no one came to help. Winter had swallowed everything. No houses nearby, no smoke, no signs of life. In the middle of that frozen silence, a woman lay alone, barely able to move. Her body was thin, curled in on itself, shaking hard as the cold cut into her skin. Her lips were split and bleeding. Her hands trembled so badly she could not control them. Each breath came slow and weak, like her lungs were too tired to keep going. Hunger burned deep inside her, sharp and constant, making it hard to think, hard to stay awake. The cold was not just around her anymore. It had settled inside her bones. She had no strength left, no food, no one searching for her. If nothing changed soon, she would not survive the night. She was hiding in an old, broken barn, a place that looked like it had been forgotten for years. The roof was cracked. The walls were falling apart, and the cold wind slipped through every gap. She had not eaten in days. Her stomach hurt all the time, a sharp burning pain that never went away. She could feel her body getting weaker with each hour. To keep her mind from breaking, she kept counting the days on the wall, marking each one like it was the only thing she could control. The marks stared back at her, a quiet reminder that she was still alive, but barely. She had nothing left, except a small silver pendant around her neck, the only thing she managed to hide when they chased her away. She held on to it, like it was a piece of her past. The barn was so quiet that the silence felt heavy, like it was pressing down on her. Even the sound of the wind seemed louder than any voice, and it made her feel even more alone. Before all of this, she was someone the town trusted. People would come to her when they were sick or hurt, and she always helped without asking for anything in return. She knew how to treat wounds, how to calm a fever, and how to make simple medicine from plants. Families relied on her, and she was known for being kind and strong. Her home was not rich, but it was full of love. She had a husband, and they lived a simple life together, working hard and supporting each other. They did not have much, but they had enough, and they were happy. The town saw her as a good person, someone they could count on. That is why it hurt so much that the same people who once thanked her now turned their backs on her, as if she was the one who brought pain instead of the one who tried to stop it. Then the sickness came, and everything changed. At first, people tried to stay calm, but fear spread fast. Children got sick, animals died, and the town began to panic. They needed someone to blame, and they didn't want to look at the real reason. Rumors started spreading like wildfire. Some people whispered that she was bringing bad luck. Others said she was cursed. The town pastor and the council leaders began to listen, and their voices grew loud and harsh. They turned on her, the way a storm turns on a weak tree. The same hands that once shook hers in thanks now pointed at her with hate. They accused her of causing the sickness, even though she had always helped them. No one asked if it was true. No one cared about the truth. It only mattered that they could put the blame on someone, and so the woman who had saved others was now being treated like the reason for their pain. That betrayal cut deeper than the cold, and it made her feel like the whole world had turned against her. They didn't just accuse her, they forced her out. The town gathered, angry and loud, and they made it clear she had to leave or face something worse. The pastor spoke like he was judging her, and the councilmen stood with hard faces. When she tried to explain, they didn't listen. They pushed her toward the door, like she was trash they wanted to throw away. Her husband stood in front of her, trying to protect her with everything he had. He begged them to stop, to listen, to remember how she had helped them. But the crowd only grew angrier. They shoved him aside, and the violence was sudden and brutal. He was hit, pushed, and left, bleeding in the snow. They didn't care. They just wanted her gone. They forced them both into the cold night, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. They walked until their feet were raw and their bodies shook. The winter was unforgiving, and the hunger was cruel. Her husband tried to keep going, but the cold and pain were too much. One night, in the same broken barn where she now hid, he fell and couldn't get up. She held his hand and begged him to stay, but his breath grew weaker and then stopped. He died there, right in front of her, and the world went silent. After he was gone, she had to keep moving alone. The guilt followed her like a shadow. She blamed herself for not saving him. She blamed herself for still being alive. The silence after his death felt heavier than the storm. She was alone, with only the memory of his voice and the pain of losing him. As the days went on, she stopped believing she would survive. Her body felt like it was shutting down, piece by piece. Hunger had taken everything from her, and the cold was no longer just outside. It was inside her, like it was part of her bones. She stopped trying to fight it. She stopped thinking about the future. There was no future left in her mind. She sat alone in the barn, staring at the snow through the cracked window, and she let herself remember one last thing. A small memory of warmth, of her husband's hand in hers, of a simple life that now felt like a dream. It was the only comfort she had left. The winter seemed endless, like it would never end, and she would never see another day. The storm outside kept screaming, and she felt like the world was closing in. Her eyes grew heavy, and her body stopped fighting. She lay back, closed her eyes, and let the silence take over. She was ready to give up, ready to let the cold finally win. Then, without warning, the barn door slammed open, and the silence broke. Cold air rushed in, along with snow and a heavy shadow. For a moment, she thought it was the town coming back to finish her. Her heart pounded so hard, it felt like it would burst. But the figure in the doorway was not a mob. It was a man. He was tall and strong, with a thick coat and an axe over his shoulder. At first, he looked dangerous, like someone who belonged to the wild winter itself. His face was serious, and his eyes were sharp. But he didn't move like a threat. He moved carefully, as if he didn't want to scare her more. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him, blocking the storm out. Then, slowly, he set down his axe and reached into his coat. He pulled out a small bundle, wrapped in cloth. When he opened it, the smell hit her like a dream: warm bread and cheese. Real food, not something she could imagine anymore. Her hands trembled as she reached for it, unsure if she was allowed to hope. He didn't ask for anything. He didn't accuse her or shout. He simply looked at her, like she was a person who mattered. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As she ate, she watched him quietly, trying to understand why a stranger would risk his own safety for her. She wanted to ask, but her voice was weak. When she finally managed to speak, she asked why he was helping her. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat down a little distance away, as if he was thinking. Then he spoke softly, like he was sharing something he had kept inside for a long time. He told her that he had also lost someone. His mother had been accused of something she didn't do, and people treated her like a monster. They chased her away, and she died alone. He was only a boy then, and he never forgot how it felt to be blamed for something he didn't cause. That was why he lived alone, now deep in the forest, away from people who turned kind hearts into enemies. He understood what it meant to be judged without proof. He didn't ask for money or thanks. He didn't want anything from her. He only wanted her to live. Hearing his story made her feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: trust. For the first time since she was forced out of town, she felt like someone saw her as a person, not a threat. And in that small moment, the world felt a little less cold. Just when she started to feel safe, the danger came back. Footsteps and voices approached the cabin, loud and angry. The town people had followed her tracks through the snow. Then, they had come looking for her again. They didn't care if she was sick or weak. They only wanted to punish her. They banged on the door, shouting and calling the lumberjack names. They accused him of hiding a witch and helping her escape. Their voices were harsh and full of hate. He stood calm, but his face turned serious. He knew they were dangerous. He moved quickly, not with panic, but with purpose. He grabbed a shotgun and told her to go down into the cellar. She didn't hesitate. She crawled down into the dark, her heart beating fast, and pressed herself against the cold dirt wall. She could hear the men outside, their boots heavy on the floor above her. The voices grew louder, and she heard the sound of a weapon being lifted. Her body shook as fear filled her. She clutched her pendant tightly, praying that he would keep her safe. The fear in that moment was so strong, she felt like she might break. She had thought she was done running, but now she realized the danger had never truly left. Before dawn, the lumberjack quietly opened the door and stepped outside to make sure the coast was clear. The angry voices had faded, but he knew they could come back at any moment. He helped her out of the cabin, and together, they began to move through the snow-covered forest. The cold was still there, but it didn't feel as sharp as before. She was not alone now, and that made a difference. He walked beside her, steady and strong, helping her when her legs grew weak. Every step was a struggle, but he never rushed her. He offered small moments of care, handing her warm water, adjusting her coat, and making sure she didn't fall. They moved quietly, using the trees for cover, and the forest seemed to protect them in its own way. Even though the journey was hard, she began to feel a small spark of hope. She realized that he wasn't just saving her for one night. He was helping her survive. With each step, her trust in him grew a little more, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she might actually live again. After a few days of traveling, they finally reached a place where the lumberjack felt it was safe to stop. The woman rested while he went to gather more supplies. During that time, she began to think about the sickness in the town, and she realized something important. The sickness was not caused by her. It was something else, something the town had ignored. When the lumberjack returned, he told her what he had learned. A mining camp upstream had been dumping waste into the river. The water that people drank and used for their animals was poisoned. The sickness started in the livestock first, then moved to the children. The truth was ugly, but it made sense. They found proof. A rider returned from the city with papers and tests showing the water was contaminated. The town leaders who had blamed her were exposed for their lies. They had been bribed to keep quiet, and they chose money over the lives of their people. When the truth came out, the town could no longer pretend she was guilty. People began to understand what had really happened. Some of them felt ashamed. Some of them were angry at those who had lied. But the most important thing was that they finally saw the truth. She had not caused the sickness. She had only tried to help. And now, justice was starting to reach her. When the truth finally came out, the town could no longer pretend she was the cause of the sickness. The leaders who blamed her were forced to admit they were wrong. The people who once shouted at her now looked at her with shame and regret. Some of them even came to apologize. But the pain they caused could not be erased with words. They offered her a chance to return, to live in the town again, and to take her old place as a healer. But she had changed. She had been broken and rebuilt, and she knew she could not go back to the same place that had turned on her. Instead, she chose to stay where she was safe, with the man who had saved her. Together, they built a new life in the forest. One that was simple but full of meaning. They built a small house, and later, a place where she could help people who needed her, far away from fear and lies. The lumberjack was no longer alone, and she was no longer afraid. Her past had tried to destroy her, but she survived. She proved that being abandoned does not mean you are worthless. Fear can destroy people, but kindness can save them. And even when the world turns its back on you, you can still find a place where you belong.